I'm Roy Lee Lindsay with the North Carolina Pork Council, and I want everyone to remember bacon makes everything better.
For the victory lap, though. Whoa, whoa. They ain't never seen that.
This is the fifth quarter on the North Carolina Sports Network, brought to you by the North Carolina Pork Council. I'm Mike Waddell. He's the coach, Jim Collins. And, Coach, a lot of action here in week 2 of the college football season in the Old North State. And the one resounding emotion that I feel after being at 2 games involving in-state teams is, wow, excellence has evaded the North Carolina college football scene here in 2024.
Well, there were some struggles out there. Yeah, we've got 2 teams that are at the highest level that are both 2-0 in Duke and the North Carolina Tar Heels. But I would say that they're not going to postpone practice this week, and obviously the Wolfpack has some decisions to make, and the good thing for the Wolfpack is they've been in this position before, and they've usually answered the bell. So we'll see where it all goes from here.
The Wolfpack doing typical Wolfpack things. They come to Charlotte, Bank of America Stadium, the Duke's Mayo Classic, and they get dumped on by Josh Heupel and the Tennessee Volunteers, 51-10. We're going to talk about this game in depth in our next segment, but just at the top right here, boy, that Wolfpack offense, it's nowhere. I mean, they were bad last year, but they are really not good except for Concepcion this year.
Well, we had that discussion a little bit last week after the Western Carolina game as we moved through that game. They're searching for an identity right now with McCall as the quarterback, and they have not found that identity at this point in time. They're struggling to run the football, and when you turn it over and you get penalties and you leave your defense on the field, it's not hard to figure out. And Dave said this, how you give up 51 points at that point in time, one of those being an interception for a touchdown. So Tennessee had a defensive touchdown in that. But don't forget now, the Vols are pretty good now. They're an SEC front on defense, and they're aggressive and can run, and they're a good football team.
North Carolina at home against UNC Charlotte. They get the win 38-20, but UNC Charlotte could have really been closer in this game. They were inside the red zone twice. Carolina's defense, they rise up. That's something they've not always done. So that's a positive to build on. But what is not a positive is the growing butcher's bill over at the Keenan Football Center, because Max Johnson is already gone for the year, and Omarion Hampton, he had 77 yards there, but he went out midway through the second quarter. He didn't come back. That can't happen. If Omarion Hampton goes down, Carolina automatically becomes maybe 1-2 shades lighter in terms of talent.
Well, against a lesser team, I thought the young guy, Goss, that came in, did a great job, rushed for over 100 yards for him. But obviously, when you're talking about an All-America running back like Omarion, if he's absent for any time at all, it hurts your offense. It hurts your planning. I did listen to Coach Brown's post-game conference, and he made the statement going to the quarterback that they need to get him on the edge a little bit more. They need to run more boots, more waggles, and get him out of the pocket and let him use his athletic ability, because he is an athlete. But that team needs Omarion Hampton in the backfield. There's no doubt about that.
Let's talk about Wake Forest. They open ACC play. They played 3 great quarters. But in the fourth quarter, it was all the Cavaliers, 14-0 in the final stanza, and the Deacons go down 31-30. Dave Clawson has got to be wringing his hands over losing that one.
I listened to Dave's post-game conference also, and Dave is the kind of guy that does not beat you up with words. He's going to say exactly what he means and how it applies to the game. It's very short. His was about 8 minutes, where the North Carolina one was over 20 minutes. So big difference there. And of course, one of them's a win, one of them's a loss at that point in time. But both teams the Cavaliers and the Deacons had no problem throwing the football down the field. I think the University of Virginia had almost 400 yards passing, as did the Deacons. Neither team ran the ball with great success, but Dave did give the Cavaliers a great deal of credit for the way they played in the fourth quarter, and that's a key win for those guys, without a doubt.
Duke in overtime by the Lake against Northwestern. This one got the weekend started on Friday night, 26-20. Malik Murphy, not wowing a lot of people right now, but he gets the dub. And right now, out of the schools we've talked about, he might be the player of the week out of the Big Four.
You know, Mike, I thought he played the best I've seen him play in the overtimes. And I thought he made a couple of really good throws and did some very, very nice things during the overtime period. The one thing he is good enough to do, he gets it to number 8 consistently in Jordan Moore, and gives that guy a chance to make plays, and he makes plays for him as well as Panko does. So I think he can be a good player for them, but what's so good about the Duke team right now is their defense. Their defense is playing outstanding, as is North Carolina's. I've got to say that they're playing very well too. If they can shore up what's happening in the back end. But as we talk about the Blue Devils, I think the Blue Devils have a shot to be 3-0. They play UConn this week and at home, so it's an encouraging win on the road for Manny Diaz and his squad.
Another team that has a tough road coming up is Appalachian State. They go to Death Valley, and it was death very early in that game. I was on the sideline of that one. The first 2 plays of the game, Clemson couldn't move the ball. They lose some yardage. It's 3rd and long, and then boom, right down the middle. Boy, Clemson opened up a can of, we didn't like the way everybody talked about us last week after getting beat against Georgia. 35-0. Clemson on top of App State at the end of the first quarter. And when you look at that, these are the scoring plays: 76, 83, 41, 29. That combination, that equals an L. Because, I mean, when you give up that kind of stuff, it wasn't just one breakdown. That was a multiple systemic breakdown for the Appalachian State defense after a pretty good performance in week 1. And again, they can't really hang around and mope too much, because they got to go down the road to Greenville and fly up against Mike Houston and the blockade this weekend with East Carolina. And that's going to be a battle.
It will. And as you said, Mike Houston and the Pirates are 2-0. They could have easily been 1-1, just like a lot of teams in the state right now could be 1-1 and 0-2, because there've been close games all over the place. But I think the key thing for the Mountaineers is just like the Wolfpack, they got to go back. They got to meet. They got to decide who they are and what they want to do. Unfortunately, they ran into an angry group of Tigers, and I think that's a reflection of how good the Georgia Bulldogs are, and maybe we underestimated the Tigers after their loss to the Bulldogs in last week. So it'll be interesting to see as we follow it along.
That is Jim Collins. I'm Mike Waddell. You're tuned into the 5th quarter here on the North Carolina Sports Network. This segment brought to you by the North Carolina Port Council. And when we come back on the other side of this message, we're going to talk in depth about the Tar Heels and the Wolfpack. We'll start out with State. That comes up next right here on NCSN.
In sports, we talk a lot about impact players who make a positive difference. When it comes to our state's economy, the North Carolina pork industry is a true MVP. Each year, the pork industry plays an important role in supporting rural communities across our state. It contributes more than $10 billion a year to the North Carolina economy and supports more than 44,000 jobs. Learn more about their positive impact at ncpork.org. The North Carolina Pork Council, the foundational partner of the North Carolina Sports Network.
They ain't never seen nothing like this before. Lit the room when I came.
The 5th quarter rolls on with the coach Jim Collins and me, Mike Waddell, right here on the North Carolina Sports Network. This segment of our show will go inside the Wolfpack and the Tar Heels, and it's brought to you by our friends at Stiefel. NC State throttled in Charlotte by the Tennessee Vols 51-10. The Wolfpack offense, as we said earlier, just not existent in the game. And the only points for the Wolfpack coming on a Kanoa Vincent 24-yard field goal and an 87-yard pick by Aiden White, who is from Asheville and played at Christ School, my high school's arch rival. So we don't like the Greenies too much. But that was a big play, one of the few bright spots for NC State. They're led by Grayson McCall. And just at the end of our last segment, we were talking about older quarterbacks. Now, Grayson has been around the block a few times. And this guy, 15 of 22, 104 yards and a pick, no touchdowns, even with Concepcion as his number one target. And that just isn't ready for prime time. Is this a concern for Dave Doran?
Oh, obviously it is, and again, I listened to Dave's post game also, and Dave Doran's, and he took, as most head coaches will, he took full blame for what happened in Charlotte on Saturday night. But at the same time, now the NC State offense has been inconsistent over the last couple of years. I question sometimes how many weapons that they have to produce quality offensive momentum in a game. You and I have talked on numerous occasions. I really like the tight end, and I like Concepcion. I thought the transfer running back from Duke would be an asset. He had minus yards rushing in the game. They have not been able to consistently run the ball in either game that they played. So the offensive production and limiting turnovers, they had 3 turnovers in the game also, and penalties. It does not give you very much of a chance to win games. And Dave said that in his post-game conference.
Tennessee's offense, 211 through the air, but 249 on the ground. That's pretty balanced. And I think that shows what type of mindset that Tennessee is going to bring to the table. The difference between the SEC and the ACC in football is night and day.
Oh, it's totally night and day. There's when you talk about every house you go into in that league, from Alabama to Auburn to even Mississippi State to LSU to playing Georgia in the Gator Bowl, all those places, there's 80,000 plus, and a lot of situations, and I hope this will go over well on this show. In a lot of places in the ACC, when you drive in on the bus, the fans stand out and they wave at you. In the SEC, they wave at you, but they only use 2 fingers, and I'm not going to say you can read between the lines to figure out which finger that they use. So it's a different mentality when you go into those places and play, and it's extremely important. And let's face it, they mean business in that league, without a doubt.
So NC State takes home their first loss of the year. North Carolina adds to their win total, along with that road win at Minnesota. The Tar Heels come back home and get the in-state FBS win over the Charlotte 49ers. And the 49ers are not good. They got beat up pretty handily by James Madison in week 1. And I'm telling you, they got in the red zone more than a couple of times in the first half. And had they converted on some of those, had the Tar Heels defense not stood up, and you mentioned how the front and the linebackers are really carrying that unit right now, that could have been a different story, especially with Hampton going out, and especially with Connor Harrell running for his damn life behind that offensive line. They're on roller skates, and now they're banged up as well. As many as 2 starters could be missing some time in week 3 for the Carolina offensive front, and that is not dialing for dollars.
No, it's not, Mike. It's a group that is not overly experienced already, and to have the opportunity to play together through these early season games and mature together is so critical as you move along, and the maturity of the offense. So they're playing with a different group of offensive linemen, and they're playing with a different quarterback than they expected to play with. From a defensive standpoint, they did a great job stopping the run, but you can't give up 7 plays through the air of 23 yards or more. You just can't. You just can't give up those kind of big plays. Their front is actually playing really well. They had 3 more sacks in the game, so they've had 8 sacks in 2 games. Obviously they would like to have a little more pressure than that, but I like the way they're playing on defense right now, and I think the linebackers are really playing well for them. They got to play a little bit better in the secondary. When you're going to blitz, like Jeff likes to pressure, then your corners have to play well. You got to cover people if you're going to play man-to-man and do those things.
Looking back over the ACC scores in total over the weekend, BYU and SMU doing battle in Dallas at Gerald Ford Stadium. That's the donor, not the president that venue is named after. And the SMU Mustangs go down in that one 18-15. Jimmy, did you ever play against either SMU or BYU in your career?
Never against BYU, but I did when I was coaching at Marshall University. I had the opportunity to play the Mustangs in Highland Park in that stadium. Beautiful little stadium and a great setting to play a game. So I was a little disappointed in the way they played offensively. And my good friend Sparky Wood's son is the offensive coordinator for the Mustangs, and Rhett Lashley, the head coach, is known for his offensive prowess. But so it was a little disappointing to see that score for those guys.
A battle of the orange and green teams down in Florida is Miami. The 12th-ranked Hurricanes of Mario Cristobal get the big 56-9 win over the Rattlers of Florida A&M. It was Louisville 49-14 over the Gamecocks of Jacksonville State. One of the big surprises over the weekend, Jim, has got to be Syracuse at home in the Dome, turning back Georgia Tech 31-28. I don't think a lot of people saw Fran Brown's orange as a potential victor in this one after the way Georgia Tech started out with wins over Florida State and Georgia State. But this time they went to the swamp up in New York and did not come out alive.
It's a tough place to play when they're going good. I've had the opportunity to coach 2 times there in the Dome. One time at Florida in the early 90s, and we took a butt whipping against them up there that night. And then one time when I was with the Blue Devils, we went up and won a big game up there. So it's a tough place to play. And Coach Brown has them playing really well. He's got a transfer quarterback from Ohio State that's come in and led the offense, and they may be a threat right now in the league.
Pittsburgh goes into Cincinnati, reviving that old Big East battle called the River City rivalry, and they get the late field goal to best my Bearcats 28-27. Pat Narduzzi's team now 2-0 as well.
Well, Coach Narduzzi, and it's interesting, we were talking about Western Carolina a little bit earlier, and Kerwin Bell, the head coach there, his son, Cade Bell, is the offensive coordinator for Pitt at this time. Obviously did a great job, and their top player is a transfer from Western Carolina, and so they're doing a great job on offense. And again, Pat Narduzzi's group, it was always going to play pretty good defense, and I think Cade Bell will get their offense going. So what's happening up north right now, and by north I mean I'm talking about Boston College and Syracuse and Pitt, and those teams are a little bit better right now than I thought they may be. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes down the road.
Boston College, you mentioned the Eagles, and Bill O'Brien's group gets a 56-0 blanking of the Dukes of Duquesne. Virginia Tech at home goes back to 500 as the Hokies best Marshall 31-14. It was Stanford 41-7 over Cal Poly. And in one of the surprises, the ACC best the SEC. I did not think Cal could go into the Plains and beat Auburn, but darn it, they didn't do that. 21-14 Cal over Auburn.
I tell you now, the Cal is an interesting team right now, and they're solid at running back and they're solid at quarterback. So it will be interesting. Again, I use the word interesting a lot because we're 2 weeks into the season, and there have not been very many games that really excite you. Even coming into this coming week, there's very few games that really excite you in the league this week. So we're still going to wait down the road and see where everything goes. One thing that I don't think we can pass up in this segment, Mike, is we can't pass up what happened in South Bend. Northern Illinois goes in and wins 16-14. Brings back memories of 2 years ago when Marshall goes in and wins in South Bend. Just think, here's how short-lived success can be in college football. 1 week ago, Marcus Freeman and that staff, Mike Denbrock, the offensive coordinator, they were the toast of the country by going into a tough place to play at Texas A&M in College Station. And then all of a sudden they come home and they lose to an FBS team in Northern Illinois. I give Northern Illinois a great deal of credit. They fought and they did a great job to go in and get that win.
He's Jim Collins. I'm Mike Waddell, and this is the fifth quarter on the North Carolina Sports Network.
Michael Berard, Managing Director Investments with the Founders Group at Stifel, works with a select group of high net worth individuals and institutions to develop and implement investment plans tailored to their specific objectives and risk tolerances. If you are interested in highly personalized, well-researched guidance and outstanding personal service, you can contact Michael at 984-364-2002. That's 984-364-2002. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
Whoa, whoa, they ain't never seen nothing like this before. Lit the room when I came through.
Jim Collins and me, Mike Waddell, here with you on the North Carolina Sports Network, and this is the fifth quarter in this segment, brought to you by our friends at the Original Saltworks. If you're in Wilmington like Jim is, I tell you, there's no better place to get a breakfast than the Original Saltworks, and I tend to like everything they do with eggs. I mean, Bob Hubbard is the chef down there and the owner, proprietor, and everything he does with an egg is absolutely fantastic. I'm a big bacon guy, too. I like sausage. You give me any kind of meat for breakfast, and I'm going to enjoy it. What's your go-to breakfast on game day, Jim?
Well, there's no doubt. I love some scrambled eggs, some bacon, a little pancake on the side, and some grits thrown in with that. Good old Southern-style breakfast. You can't beat it.
I seem to remember, did you enjoy hot sauce sometimes on your eggs?
I do love hot sauce on my eggs. There's no doubt about it. A little Tabasco and spice them up a little bit and go down the road, man. It's great.
Now, one of the things I can tell everybody that Jim and I kind of knew that our time in the AAF was coming to an end when our league folded after 8 weeks was when they took away the hot sauce at the pregame meal. When you can't afford hot sauce, it's kind of like if you're at a school and you can't give the cream cheese to go along with the bagels. I mean, it gets pretty tough. But you know the other thing that's tough, Jim, are veteran quarterbacks. I remember that Dennis Leary line out of one of my favorite movies called Draft Day, when he says, I don't like rookie quarterbacks. They're scared. They're stupid. They don't know what's going on. Give me a veteran who knows how to run my offense, and that's the guy that's going to help me win championships. And you may see that this year with Cam Ward. You may see that with Quinn Ewers at Texas. Where you're not seeing that, though, right now are places like Oregon and even at Notre Dame with a guy that we know from last year and we thought was really en route to doing some great things a year ago for Coach Mike Elko at Duke, and that's Riley Leonard. He is looking really, really average right now.
Well, it's been a struggle, and I think the thing that you have to go back on is that as we all remember, he had the injury against Notre Dame last fall and carried that all the way through spring practice. So he basically missed all of spring practice at Notre Dame. In a brand new offense, being comfortable in that offense, and I'm sure he practiced and took most of the, if not all of the first team reps in preseason camp, but it's hard. It's a hard transformation. I would almost say that Riley's situation, even though he's a veteran guy, when you're in a completely new system this spring practice, it's almost like being a rookie at that point in time.
When you look at that situation specifically in Notre Dame, where Riley Leonard missed spring practice, and then he isn't maybe up to speed the way the rest of the guys are with the offense, is that a Riley Leonard problem or is that a Marcus Freeman problem? Isn't that something a coach should be able to pick up on and make sure that the offense is serviceable to where you're not losing to a MAC school? Because Northern Illinois is not one of the better teams in the MAC. They just got a great win over a top 10 program, and they weren't even picked to win the MAC this year.
Well, you have to be able to adjust to the skills of the person that you're playing with at any position, not just quarterback, but really, really, especially at quarterback. And as you mentioned earlier, we have three schools, actually all four schools in what we call the Big Four, for lack of a better term. They're all playing with transfer quarterbacks at this point in time. So, do you adjust your system, or do you force the player to adjust to the system that you want to play? And I'm a firm believer that you have to adjust what you do to fit the talents of that person that's playing quarterback and any other position for you.
Since all of the Big Four schools are playing with transfer quarterbacks, why would you sign as a quarterback out of high school and go to a Big Four school right now? Wouldn't it be better to go somewhere where you know you're going to be able to play and play into a place to where you're going to be able to select your opportunity, as opposed to having to go somewhere and play behind another hired gun?
Well, Mike, that's a great point. And I think there's a lot of schools that are FCS schools and FBS, lower FBS, not Power 4 teams, that are using that as a recruiting tool right now. Come to us, play for us at this little bit lower level. We'll prepare you, we'll coach you well, and you play for us 2 years, get your statistics up, and then you can go into the transfer portal and go anywhere you want to go in the country. And I'm going to add a little bit to what I just made about Duke, North Carolina State, and Wake. East Carolina is also playing with a transfer quarterback.
That's right.
Appalachian State is playing with a junior college transfer quarterback, and UNC Charlotte is playing with, or they were until he got hurt. Max Brown is University of Florida transferred to UNC Charlotte. So everybody in the state's playing with transfer quarterbacks.
One last thing, and in our next segment, we have Eric Lusk from North Carolina Football News, who comes in with our fabulous 15 check-in every week right here on the fifth quarter. But, Jim, I want to ask you this, because I was having some conversations on the sideline, both at the St. Andrews road game at Anderson, which was Bobby Lamb's first ever game as the head coach at Anderson, and the first ever football game for the Trojans, and they won that one going away from the Knights. And then in the nightcap, I'm in Death Valley for Appalachian State's loss to Clemson. But I'm talking to a lot of folks, a lot of people that you and I both know, and I'm talking to them about this one specific question. What's more important right now? To have a great head coach, to have a great general manager, which is what they're calling the positions right now in college football, that really look at the transfer portal and the high school ranks and kind of weave together the tapestry of recruiting? Or is it putting your money towards the roster? Because, I mean, it costs a lot of money, but like Nick Saban says, you can have a $20 million payroll, but if you're paying the wrong dudes, you're going to lose some games.
You better go out and hire the best head coach that you can hire, one that is a veteran and one that can raise money through the collectives, et cetera, because you have to be able to fund the roster to play with the big boys. You and I talked about an article last week about the top 15 collectives in this country. The Ohio State roster right now is worth $20 million. $20 million for their Ohio State football roster. And that's not to mention the other sports that they have there. And then we could go on and on through that until these antitrust suits are settled and the universities can start paying these players. Then you better have a veteran head coach that can go out and recruit and develop a roster along with a general manager who can manage that roster.
We'll talk to Eric Lusk of NorthCarolinaFootballNews.com coming up next, right here on the fifth quarter.
The original Salt Works has become a legendary breakfast, brunch, and lunch place in Wilmington for both locals and out-of-town visitors over the last 50-plus years. Our good friend Bob Hubbard owns the place, but he's also the one cooking your food and often roaming the dining room to greet you with a smile and to make sure your visit is a great one. Bob has been running the show at this unique roadside diner for more than 20 years now, and he and his friendly, hardworking staff aim to treat you like one of their own. Try Bob's homemade omelets or special recipe grits for breakfast, or his legendary cheeseburgers for lunch. The Original Salt Works, your breakfast and lunch choice on Oleander Drive in Wilmington.
Whoa, whoa, they ain't never seen nothing like this before. Lit the room when I came.
This is the fifth quarter on the North Carolina Sports Network, and this is our fun segment of the week where Coach Jim Collins and myself, Mike Waddell, welcome in the one, the only, the editor-in-chief, the proprietor, the guru behind all of these cool stats and articles at NorthCarolinaFootballNews.com. And Eric Lusk, I know you go to games every week. You love football. You live and breathe it. But have you ever had the chill bumps on your arms the way they were yesterday when the number one football program on Friendly Avenue goes across the Gate City, brother, and gets the win in the Super Bowl? How about those tickets? Woo! Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Super Bowl, I was there. I put it on my calendar. I said, I got to go see this, this big game. And, not going to lie, it was a good game. I mean, it was physical. There's some talking and, some hooping and hollering, and it's maybe a small crowd, little stadium bleachers, but it was a for real atmosphere. I got one of my best pictures. I put it up on our Twitter account. Literally, helmet getting knocked off a guy. Max Steele, linebacker for Greensboro College. He's been there for several years, about 100 tackles a game. He literally knocked a helmet off somebody. And then I've got pictures of running backs from Guilford just plowing through people. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. And it made me realize, from Death Valley down to, the D3 schools, there's just a lot of passion in football, and it shows up on Saturdays. And I just, I'm blessed to be a part of it all. So
let's talk about another guy who's having a nice 2024 so far, and that's the new head coach of the Campbell Camels, Braxton Harris. I had a chance to work with him 2 years ago when he was one of the Mike Minter assistants. He went away for a year, went to Houston Christian, has come back to replace Mike Minter, and they got a big win. I tell you, I did not think that after watching Western Carolina, Jim, play against NC State, I did not think that Campbell had a snowball's chance of getting the win over the Catamounts, but darn if they didn't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. In April, I went to their spring game, and I remember talking to him, and he said, we're a sleeping giant about to awake. Well, I mean, we hear that a lot, right? I mean, that's a good coach line. But, hey, if you can go up the hill to Cullowhee, Western Carolina, I didn't really think much about that game. I just figured that's a Western win. Campbell may, show themselves well. But they stole the headlines. Preseason All-American quarterback for Western. They picked him off 4 times, and Campbell's quarterback Chad Masco threw for 300+ yards, a couple of touchdowns. So yeah, great win for them. And suddenly it's like, whoa, we got to pay attention to Bowie's Creek because they got it done.
Western Carolina, I know their head coach quite well, and I know their defensive coordinator very well. They're both really, really good football coaches.
Yes.
And to lose at home like that, and then the quarterback, the Gonzalez, his dad is a longtime Division I coach. He's a receiver coach at the University of Florida right now. So that is a big win for the Camels, no doubt.
Elon coming through also like Campbell, playing out of the Coastal Athletic Association, gets the win this weekend. They manhandle North Carolina Central 41-19.
Right. Yep. That was my nightcap. I started in Greensboro. A lot of good games to choose from this year. I chose to do that doubleheader, and Elon was very impressive. It was 24-0. Had a big running game. They shut down. Central's got an offense. They're a big play offense, and they didn't really let them get going to the second half. So again, veteran team. Experienced coach. I think they're going to be. They were picked 5th or 6th in the CAA. But that's a good league. The top 5 or 6 teams are all top 25 caliber. I think they can give them a run. We'll see what happens, but early returns look good for the Phoenix.
It's an interesting matchup this week also with Western Carolina coming to Elon to play the Phoenix. So that'll be a great matchup this Saturday.
Yeah, that's probably my game of the week. I'll probably end up, Lord willing, I'll end up there. So, and could be a shootout, or could be, who knows, could be a defensive struggle the way Elon's been playing defense of late. So
that's Eric Lusk. He's the editor-in-chief of NorthCarolinaFootballNews.com. And Eric, while the D1 teams in the state are vacillating a little bit between good to great to not so great. The D2 schools, especially the HBCUs, have a lot of talent.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. This is really a good start for the CIAA teams that are based in North Carolina. In the past, you had a Northern Division, you had a Southern Division. The Southern Division was all North Carolina teams, so you were guaranteed to get somebody from North Carolina going to the championship game. Well, this year, with St. Aug's not playing, they went to a non-division format, so you've got to be top two. And Virginia State, Virginia Union, they were the ones picked to lead the league. So, but I think Fayetteville State, Johnson C. Smith, Winston-Salem State, I think they have a potential to knock down the door. Hey, why not try to get both teams, two North Carolina teams in that championship game? And Shaw, for the first time in probably about 12 years, is 2-0. So their quarterback, we'll give a little shout out to him, Christian Peters, 5 touchdown passes, 1 touchdown rushing, leads Shaw to a 43-40 win. At Albany State. Albany State was picked to win the SIAC, I guess that's how you say it, CIAC. So, go in there and win on the road, account for 6 touchdowns. Happy days for the Shaw Bears right now. So, they play Catawba this week, so that'll be interesting. Catawba is kind of an up-and-coming team in D2 as well. So that's one of the D2 games of the week we've got coming up.
So we've talked D1, D2, D3. I guess that puts us right to where we like to go every week when we unveil the brand new Fabulous 15 from NorthCarolinaFootballNews.com. Eric, who are the top teams in the state this week as you look at it?
I'm wrestling with it. We usually drop it on Tuesday mornings. That's when we put it out. Last year, it was an easy, things kind of wrote itself. Carolina and Duke got off to great starts. Duke was welcoming College game day to town, so they kind of led the way. This year, it's been topsy-turvy. I mean, maybe you guys can give me some votes on how to do it. Does Campbell or Elon jump in there? Does some of our 2-0 HBCUs jump in there? Do we dare reward the Tar Heels or the Blue Devils for being 2-0, even though that it's, subpar teams they're beating or whatever? So, yeah, that's something I'm still really wrestling with. And I was hoping to come on here and have it all lined up. But, our number one this past week, North Carolina Central lost. NC State was our number one to start the season. Obviously they got throttled. So, I got some work to do to figure this out. So maybe some fans can sign off on that.
I can see this already. You don't want to be number one in Eric's top 15 right now. You get your butt beat the next week.
That's right. You got your Sports curse. Tab 15 curse. So,
Eric, one of the big games coming up this week is East Carolina at home against Appalachian State. East Carolina smarting from losing up at Boone a year ago. That was one of our old North State tailgate tour stops a year ago. And now Appalachian State, after getting the win at home, go on the road, get dismantled in some epic fashion down in Death Valley against Clemson. They have to go on the road and play against East Carolina. Will Appalachian State answer the bell like Clemson did after getting thumped by Georgia? Or does this linger on for Coach Sean Clark and the Mountaineers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we'll learn a lot about the makeup of that team. They kind of did this last year where they're a little bit slow out of the gate. Even in the ECU game, they were slow out of the gate and kind of stormed to the win. So if I had to pick a winner now, I'd say Appalachian State. ECU won, but you look at some behind-the-scenes stats. Quarterback throws for a bunch of yards, but then has 4 interceptions and no touchdown passes. So that's a little bit. But ECU, looking up some of their rushing stats, their opponents are averaging about 1.2 yards a carry right now so far. So, if App wants to run the ball, that may be a little bit tricky. But then again, you've got, a quarterback who's supposedly the Sun Belt Player of the Year. So I would give the edge to App. But again, ECU, they're hoping to get back on track, and this would be huge for them. If they can go to 3-0, they may be the Fab 15 team of the week next week.
Jim, as you look at that type of a game, Mike Houston is truly building his program back from the ashes of a year ago. They brought in a ton of transfers. They have a brand new offense. They have a brand new offensive coordinator here in 2024. When you look at East Carolina, is this a program that can be the number 5 program in the state behind the Big Four? Is it Appalachian? Does Charlotte ever have a chance to rise up? What will it take for one of these three teams, Charlotte, East Carolina, or Appalachian State, to truly rise up and challenge the Big Four?
Money.
Yep.
I'm just being frank, because we're all better coaches with really good players, and it takes money to get players to stay in time. And when I say that, I'm talking about NIL and collectives and all those things. So the team that manages their roster the best, whether it's Charlotte, whether it's App State, whether it's ECU, when it comes to roster management, and you get a good player on your team, can you keep him on your team? So not only does it mean gathering transfers, but it also means that once you get a really good player, you better be ready to pay him to keep him.
And boy, you'd think that East Carolina could raise some money, because I don't think they care about anything in Greenville other than football and baseball. And just being honest, in Boone, they care about football and basketball. At Charlotte, I don't know. I think it's still a very young program, and I think it's tough to raise money right now. Fans are not giving money. Donors are not giving money to these collectives in the way that is sustainable. That's another nugget I pick up over the weekend. Not like I didn't know it going in, but there's not like this endless flow of money coming in to do this. So I think that is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Absolutely.
Expectations are a dangerous thing. Jim, you know that, as being on the coach and being on the other end of those social media barbs and, the old call-in shows, stuff going on when you were at Duke and Florida and so many other schools. Eric, are the expectations too high from fans that they expect Appalachian State to go into Death Valley and win? Is it too much to expect that North Carolina and NC State should be able to win an ACC championship at some time since 1979 and 1980?
Yeah, I've been wrestling with this in my mind for a long time, just thinking through, why is it that we have not had that? Why is it that TCU can make the playoff, Cincinnati can make the playoff, Boise State can rise up for a few years? And it's a great question. If you look recently at the commitments, there's all the top level high school recruits, class of 2025, class of 2026, chose Tennessee. I thought, what would happen? What would it take to convince those guys, hey, go to State, go to Carolina? What are you doing? Let's form the And I think, Coach, you hit on it. It is money. And I think, the ACC, the soul of the ACC has always been basketball. And I think, I think there is a contingent of people who are very passionate about football, including myself. But are there enough? Is there enough willpower to raise that money, to have that, overflow that you need? People were talking about Tennessee. They said there's just a different caliber athlete that played at Tennessee against NC State.
You're right.
And what does it take to get that? At NC State or Carolina, I think, the money aspect, but then also, if you look at the successful little guy programs, they found someone who was maybe a little bit too short, a little bit too small, and they brought him in and made him the star. So, that's where you have to find those coaches who can find the gyms and coach them up. And but it starts somewhere. So, if you've got to start somewhere. And so, I think fans are I think that's the one thing that people who have criticized Coach Brown or Coach Dorn is we haven't had that one breakthrough season. Just give us one where they win 12 games, go to the playoff, or, knock off Notre Dame at home or knock off a Tennessee. I think that would take a lot of the heat down and probably would help in the long run. But yeah, we're waiting. It's been a long time since we've had that kind of success here.
I agree with you 100%, Eric. And it is a money issue, and it is the ability to maintain your roster and those things that all go along with it. But the other thing that is a huge factor in all this is the ability to build from within, and it's hard as you recruit the state of North Carolina, and you probably have a better opinion on this than I do. It's hard to find that diamond in the rough these days, because Mike, you mentioned this earlier that there's 65 to 85 to 100 people on these staffs. The Power Four schools, it's like pro football at this point in time. You have a staff that does nothing but investigate potential transfers. You have a staff that does nothing but evaluate high school talent. So to say that there's one out there that you're going to miss on, there's very few misses out there this day and time. So, but I do agree with you on this. You have to win your own state. And when it comes to winning this state, the pie can get divided up very quickly in this state because of the number of schools that we have.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, that's probably a big problem. 7 FBS teams, all trying to get those guys. And to me, I think State and Carolina they should be able to rise above that. I would think they should be the two dominant. They should be Virginia Tech type. But again, it's you got to get a few in. I think if you can cross that one bridge and just have that one breakout season, I think that does help out. And we'll sit here until it happens and pray for it and cover it and love it when it does happen.
That's Eric Lusk. That's Jim Collins. I'm Mike Waddell. This has been the fifth quarter of the North Carolina Sports Network. Enjoy the games coming up here in week 3. And we'll see you next week right here at the same time, talking football all across the Old North State.